Well, what better on a rainy afternoon for all of us that we're all together here in the theater, and to welcome not one, but two world-renowned physicists. And first, we'll have Sung Jai talk a bit, and some of you may remember Sung. He was a resident here and did many talks and is still being remembered. And we have with us some friends from New Zealand, and Joshua will be speaking today, and his foundation is the Embassy of Peace in New Zealand, and actually really international, because I know you do publish and speak and have many people in the community. And today he'll speak about 30 minutes, and then we're going to open it up for conversation. And I think your topic will be inner peace and social harmony. Yes. Is that right? Okay. And first we'll have Sung Jai come and speak a little bit and perhaps introduce the subject.
Okay.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you. Thank you for coming on this rainy day, just before storm. It's good to be here again, to see some of you again. There he comes.
Is it Doc?
Hi.
Well, you're old friends.
So the main speaker is Joshua, but he asked me to say something before he presents his main theme. What I'd like to show you is a picture. This is this on the left-hand side here is the result of 4 decades of research. As a scientist, I summarized my result of my 4 decades of research in biology and physics in this slide, on this side of the slide. The main point of this picture slide is that everything that I know about what happened in physics, mainly in biology during the last 4 decades, can be summarized here, starting with the Big Bang and evolution of life, stars and galaxies, and then life and us and human society and so on, a well-known evolutionary process. Nothing is new, it's all known. But what is new is that I think Big Bang itself began with a non-material, a combination of 4 things: energy, matter, life, and information. These 4 elements are unified into one entity, which doesn't have name in the dictionary. So I made word energy, gnu meaning information, and ergi meaning organ or work. It's a combination of information and energy. It is the beginning of everything in the universe, in my opinion. And that's indeed something new. And after that, what happened after Big Bang is well known. So this was what I had when I came to Miami after retiring from Rutgers University 2 years ago. And after coming to Miami, I got to see my son, my daughter, and my son's girlfriend, and so on. And my views began to change beyond science. This is purely science. beyond science to more spiritual domain, which Joshua will talk about, and came to the conclusion that this model of the universe can evolve to a beautiful world or ugly world, depending on how we utilize artificial intelligence.
Sure.
If humanity uses artificial intelligence positively, that will lead to a beautiful world, which I call Miami Angel, because I saw the glimpse of this beautiful world since coming to Miami and experiencing many beautiful things that I have experienced, which includes my experience in Miracle. On the other hand, if humanity uses artificial intelligence negatively, we will lead into Mariupolator, that Ukraine, miserable hell-like world. And that's why Joshua wanted to speak before his talk. And the way to Miami Angel from the current knowledge of science needs guidance, spiritual guidance, that Joshua is going around the world to promote. So,
Thank you.
I'll hand it over to you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to shift the presentation to the other and start. So that would be this one, yes? Yes. And
Okay.
so I'm just going to let Gary drive the car. I'm going to be seeing the sinners. So what song came with some years ago, since we've been collaborating, was very profound because it was bringing to the attention of the physics and biophysics and biologist community that the universe is not just energy and matter. There is information that informs us to make decisions, or animals or other species. And information is not something that you can measure physically. And so if information informs biology through the DNA and through social interactions, we speak and we process information and our brains create meanings and we have values which are meaningful to us. All that is kind of information which science have relegated for a long time because it was too hard to deal with. What is meaning? What is information? But none of us, no sane person can deny that our lives is shaped not just by physical processes and biological processes, but by internal processes which are evoked by meanings based on information. And so he was, I think, one of the pioneers, together with a person I collaborated a lot in Berkeley, a brain dynamic scientist, Walter Freeman, to bring that element of information and meaning and knowledge into the picture of science. And so, of course, my talk today is not going to be about that, but I just want to say that artificial intelligence, which is a subject at the moment, very hot subject, it's being shaped as we speak, depending on the values and the knowledge of human beings and meanings that we apply to reality. And so, if we grow and we become better people, the artificial intelligence that we will produce will mirror us. If we don't grow and we stay stagnated in the status quo that we see in most places in, let's say, the political arena, then artificial intelligence will become very destructive. And so the call really, the root cause of what we're going to see is us. How are we doing as human beings? And that requires spiritual development and human potential development. And that's the subject of my conversation with you today. So, when we talk about, okay, I could actually talk without looking at that, but I'm going to use these slides a little bit, just to create some context. But what happens inside of us, it's a consequence of a lot of talking since we are babies with our parents, our siblings, then our communities, our teachers, our society, and so on. And the meanings that we develop depend on how we interact with those communities. And those communities have a body of ancient wisdom that they draw wisdom on how to live. They have personal revelations, people who have insights and realize new things that are good for us. They have science, which is the body of science we have developed till now. And they have also a psychological element colored by, and I'm going to invoke one school of psychology, transpersonal psychology and humanistic psychology, which is the psychology of values, meanings, and spiritual experience. And all that plays out together explicitly or implicitly in shaping our world. Of course, every community in the world has a portion of all these areas which is a little bit different. You know, the people who are in India will have an understanding of spiritual wisdom and social harmony through the lens of Hinduism. The people who are born in the Middle East will have an understanding of moral values and spiritual life and social harmony through the lenses of Islam, and ancient Israel to the lenses of Jewish spiritual wisdom. And so we have all these bodies of beliefs based on meanings and knowledge that we have created. And the question that is posed is, biophysically, what is getting in the way for us to have a social harmony setting and feeling at peace with one another? Because biophysically there is nothing that gets in the way. Our bodies and our minds do not get in the way unless they are colored with beliefs and meanings which are diametrically opposed from community to community. And so if biophysically we don't have an impediment to find peace, because there are many people who found peace in every culture, from every single nation, so it wasn't that their culture and their beliefs were impairing them, they were delaying the process that biologically we can achieve, which is inner peace, stability, and general well-being. So what's getting in the way? So that's why we started the process at the center of understanding the sovereignty of the human being and peace, and particularly what constitutes an embassy of peace, and within the framework of that, what constitutes peace propagation, social harmony, interactions between human beings that share moments that are good for each other, and then they feel peace after certain meetings. And I'm going to focus on that today, not on the side that we will know can lead also to anger and frustration and fear and all that. I'm going to focus on the side of the interactions that builds an individual towards a harmonious human being. Focus on that. We know that the other stuff is there and it's playing a part too, but if we shift attention and say, okay, we know that, we know the survival mechanism, we know the different beliefs, we know what we have inside us, which is an asset, a capital, a working capital that is not money, it's values inside of us, and wisdom and knowledge to find peace in ourselves and with one another. And so in 2009, I published my master's in cognitive science. This is not theology or philosophy, called the Paradigm of Melchizedek. And then with the thesis, parallel to the thesis, a little bit later, I published a paper called The Connective Paradigm of Melchizedek, a novel scientific paradigm that incorporates spiritual values and behavioral values. So beliefs are based on behavioral values. That's how we're conditioned by a reward and fear conditioning. Good boy, bad boy. So we learn to behave. That's behavioral, cultural. But spiritual values are essences and presences that can change our behavior. Suddenly we're people who behave in a certain way. We meet another person, we feel this love, or a granddad or a granduncle or a person, a total stranger that speaks words of wisdom, and we feel that in our hearts, and suddenly our behavior starts to change. And it's not based on something external, enforcement law, for example, or counseling. Our behavior starts to change because we start to change inside, and our perception of reality and worldview start to change. Of course, our meanings about life start to change. So the question is, how do we go, and from science and from transpersonal psychology, including personal revelation, this inner transformation from ancient to modern wisdom? How do we bring that transformation, which becomes part of our personal wisdom, into the knowledge and the pool of social wisdom? And then we inform things like technology and artificial intelligence, government policy, etc., education. All right, keep going. Okay, so I'm going to just briefly touch on that. Our biology, our bodies are immersed in the environment. This is very evident to us. We don't need further proof for that. Everyone in life can go to nature and see that we are connected with nature. If it's cold, we feel cold. If it's hot, we sweat. So we're connected with the environment. And our brains are shaped, the perception of reality, but we experience in the environment. Sometimes we feel frustrated because it's really cold, sometimes, or really hot. Sometimes we feel happy because everything is really nice in the environment. There are no animals that are dangerous to us. We're having a picnic and so on. That can change too if something happens, a threat appears. So we know that we're connected with the environment, but the environment is not just what's out here. Our environment is also what we are experiencing continuously inside, because our experiences inside, it's the environment of our neurons, of our cells. So if we're stressed, we may be creating a disease in the body. If we're relaxed, we may be creating a regeneration in the body. So it's very important for us to know how to relax and minimize the levels of stress we're experiencing. And to see if we can rejuvenate, we can feel better, we can feel more healthy and more vital and more vibrant. So that's one aspect. But see, that is immersed in the universe. Planet Earth is immersed in the universe, which is mainly radiation and dark matter and electromagnetic fields. That's why I call classical and quantum fields. So the cosmos is affecting the Earth. The plants that we eat and the fruits that we eat are affected by the solar energy. Our brain dynamics and our perception of reality is affected by waves, brain waves and heart waves. So that's the physics side and the cosmos side of the universe, which he put so well in his first picture. And then, so then we have what we call psychophysiological coherence. Physiological meaning body, signs like temperature and heart rate variability, and psycho like I'm feeling happy, I'm feeling bad, or so those things connect to create either coherent or discoherent, meaning relaxed and cognitive healthy state, or stressed and cognitive confusing state. And if we can control those states with certain practices on a daily basis, instead of those states, happy or sad, being random, if we can actually address our challenges that come from the external world with internal wisdom and skills, we may mediate that which is a sad day, to be a sad hour, so it doesn't turn into a sad day or a sad week. So the periods of sadness we will experience can be diminished, so that we can address the challenges we have way more powerfully and more efficiently. All right, so let's get out of here. I already talked a little bit about the difference between spiritual values and behavioral values. I'm going to expand on that in the next talk when I present here, I just want to focus on inner peace and social harmony and community dynamics, okay? But remember, meaning, values, spiritual values, higher meanings, semantic meanings, body language meanings. So if I go like this, you know, and I'll grab my bike, you get the meaning, I'm about to go. If I say verbally, I'm gonna go with my bike, you know it semantically. But the experience of having a great time, a joyful time, just anticipating that I'm gonna be biking is not something that you really know. But you can sense that I'm happy, okay? You can experience happy by empathy, by resonance with me. And so maybe you would like to feel as happy as I feel because you had a really awful day. So you hang up and say, hey, can you just stop for a moment? Before you go biking, can we talk a little bit? And then after our conversation, suddenly your perception of reality has changed. Like when you go to the doctor, you feel more relaxed. You know, the doctor have helped you in understanding that, yeah, you have a problem, but you can deal with it in a more peaceful way, and being peaceful will help you. So this is something that we can do for each other if we know how to do that. And so, okay, so that's the area of spiritual values and human interactions. And then we can have also a process of purification of our stressful thoughts by practicing meditation, by walking in nature, by gathering together with people who we love and we like and we have good times. All that can contribute to your inner peace. Okay. All right, so the question that some pose to us, how do we create a Miami-ator instead of Mariupolator, meaning a world of harmony and peace and health instead of a world of war and disease and destruction? It's basically, in my thesis, in my master's thesis, connected to incorporating meaning and values and a paradigm shift for science to start to study the science of inner peace. Meaning not just the quantitative, qualitative methods that we use to understand our physiology, our psychology, and our physics, but to understand our spiritual states, our internal states, our subjective states, and how those subjective states affect our objective, rational thinking. If we are upset, we don't think properly. If we are at peace, we think better. So everything that we measure as doctors goes in the body, it's affected by the subjective nature of ourselves. And so that's the connection I want to study, or I've been studying for the last 20 years. How the inner state of the individual will affect the rational thinking, the cognitive clarity, the health, and so on. And of course, if that affects each of us individually, that certainly will affect social harmony, because if every one of us is taking responsibility for being at peace and peaceful, then our interactions, our relationships will be more geared toward social harmony. We will be able to help others who are sad more effectively because we are okay. We know we can read into the pain of the other and have words of wisdom and have actions of kindness and do all these things that appear to be, on the surface, but actually suddenly become foundational. Let's remember that Song stated that for him, the Big Bang of the universe and all the evolutionary process up to here, this moment in time, in this conference, in this community, in this social dynamics, was preceded by something that incorporated more than just energy and matter. His conclusion after many, many years, and he's not alone in the scientific community. I haven't had a long journey like Song. I'm still younger than him, but I know people his age who are very much tuned into this understanding of reality. Mathematicians, physicists, I mean, I can name them and send them you information about that, but that's not the purpose of today. The purpose of today is say science is not anymore a closed body to meaning, values, spiritual experience and subjectivity. And so all that means that we comprehend what's going on with us, and we develop what will be part of my next talk, our I am identity. So instead of saying I'm a flute player, I can say I am the music. Music is who I am, and I play this instrument. So I'm an expression of music in that instrument. Instead of saying I'm a loving mother or brother, I can say I am the love that exists in the universe. And I can express that love as a mother, as a teacher, as a friend. So instead of my identity being grounded in what I do occasionally, like being a teacher or being a consultant, that's not who I am, that's what I do. Who I am is love or truth or unity, most of the time expressed in what I do. So my identity becomes values instead of skills. I am the quality of the person that you can experience. That's who I am, not what I do, not my skills. Because skills don't define who I am. My actions and my sentiments for others define who I am. And so I'm moving from a biophysical identity, this body is who I am, to my subjective sense of existential self, saying, I am that self, and I am a loving human being because I am also love, as the universe is love in many instances. And so when you say I am without any qualifier, I can also say I am. I am. You can say I am. So we share that center of existence. Then qualify it with your experience. I am love, I am humor, I am whatever you know yourself to be. We know in children we identify very, very easily if they're humor or if they're more, stillness and quietness. Which are the qualities that are more prevalent in different children? You can see them. They don't have too much filters. And so I'll leave it there. Keep going. Okay, so basically I've just talked about spiritual life grounded in biology. Human life is a subjective, objective, complementary experience. That's basically the conclusion of my first little slide. The science of peace, a constructive and benevolent science. It's the science that studies how to be internally in peace and in social relationships which are harmonious, and that's geared to improving the human condition intellectually, morally, physically, and spiritually. And that's basically the synthesis of this half of my talk today. And I'm going to go back to the model I'm going to experience. So I was talking about revelation and inner spiritual experience. I was meditating at the beach one day in New Zealand for world peace. And I was just meditating like that, and suddenly I felt a weight in my hand. I opened my eyes and I had this dove standing on my hand. And that was very meaningful. So I'm saying to Kali, with the dove here, wild dove, get the camera and take a picture. So she took a picture, it's standing on my apple. She didn't came to eat the apple, she just came at that moment. That was a very meaningful moment because I was meditating for peace. And as you all know, the dove is a symbol for peace. So that meaning came to me, wow, this was like an answer to my meditation or prayers or intentions or wishes for world peace. All right, so keep going then. These kind of experiences through the years have shaped what I'm going to share now with you, which is how do we get a community of people who are awake and aware to the sacredness of life, to these moments of peace, to these higher visions and aspirations to get to a world as we know it now, to a world which is really peaceful and just and merciful and happy, as our Declaration of Independence and our Constitution here in this nation state. We're all created equal under God for the pursuit of freedom, happiness, and justice. Well, that's got a meaning for anyone who can relate to that meaning. So if that is something of a higher ideal that we can actually navigate towards, the question is, how do we do that? How do we do that? And the answer is to be found in texts, but also in communities who know how to do that. So this is a model that is a living model of a community that we're part of in New Zealand for the last 30 years. How to move from a level of a mixture of people who come to live together. Some of them are distressed or sometimes violent. Most of them are good people, but not necessarily spiritually enlightened. And some of them are willing to be enlightened, studying or practicing meditation or praying every day. And some of them, very few, are enlightened human beings, wise men and women who can be there in the community as, let's call them the elders or the guardians. And that doesn't mean they have to be old. Elders can mean that they have achieved a level of wisdom that they can guide others through their challenges when it's required, so that they can find their own inner understanding of reality and learn how to govern themselves, be sovereign beings unto themselves without the king telling them how to behave from the top. We can learn how to do that. So basically, I talk about 3 different states of consciousness, or 4 that I just told you. 0, which is basic survival mode, people who are just trying selfishly to compete for resources and being violent. In the extreme, you can see them as robbing houses and things like that, which in New Zealand very rarely happens, but it happens, okay? State 1 is the majority of the people who are good people. They want to have a family, they want to have a good life, but they don't have an insight into reality which is deeper than just the values of you shall not kill, you shall not steal, you shall not lie, and try to have a moral ground, a moral foundation to have a social harmony. And with the help of enforcement law and justice systems, regulate society. Then you have those beings that are already masters in moral elements of life. They really know how to live morally, but they don't have a connection with God, or they're not fully enlightened yet like the prophets or prophetesses of old. They just know how to live morally, okay, like my mother would, or raised me and so on. And then, but they have awakened to the place that they want to find out more deeply that connection with God and the universe. So I call those ones state 2, students of higher spiritual laws. You'll find them in ashrams in India, in some churches, and some synagogues, or in some places. Not all the people who attend the services of those religions will be, there would probably be more state 1 than 2, but you'll find them inspired by the wisdom of the different traditions, seeking to become enlightened, seeking to become wise men and women, saints, or holy people. Not in the sense of the Holy Empire of Rome, which we know led to a disaster in the name of God, but I'm talking about genuine people who are pure in their hearts and minds, and they want all the time to serve the higher good in the universe, or God, if they label that higher good with the label of God. And then you have people who I call tzaddikim and tzaddikot, people who are wise, realized, fully realized men and women. So, okay, keep going. So considering these 4 categories of states, you can conceive of a community that starts, let's say, with 11 people. 2 or 1 of them are distressed and sometimes occasionally violent. 6 of them are good people, and that makes them already 8. And then you have maybe, let's say there are 12 people. 3 of them are students of the light. They're really making an effort to meditate, pray, and read wisdom in texts. And 1 person is a very wise man or woman in the community. And then you wonder, will they, all of them, living a life like that with a wise person, 3 students of life, majority being good people and very few being violent, will make it to a peaceful community? And how long will that take? And what kind of interactions have to happen for us to get there? Yeah? You could think about that community when being miracle, or 7 floors. I mean, you could think about any community in the world and try to configure, your own community into what's the mixture here, and how do we make it towards peace?
Okay, keep going. And of course, you know, you can make transitions from being survival consciousness to becoming a good person, from being a good person to become a student of the light, and eventually from being a student of the light to becoming an enlightened being. Those are transitions that can happen gradually in your lives. And so the question is how they happen. Well, my observation so far, and I can model this mathematically, I'm going to show you the results, is that that can happen by events. How many times a week I meet with a good person? How many times a week I meet with a wise person? How many times a week I meet with a violent person? Do I influence them toward goodness, or do they make me angry and make me, you know, kind of fall from my own state of grace? And so, as I understand that my personal growth depends on me, and my interactions are going to start to happen kind of randomly during the months in my community, then I can prepare myself to different kinds of interactions. Yeah? And the point here is that in every interaction that happens every day, in every hour, you can influence a person towards the next level of consciousness, towards where you are, because you can only bring them to where you are, or they can influence you to where they are. So ideally, we always meet people who are in a higher state of consciousness than we are. But when we don't, when we meet people who are in a state of consciousness which is closer to survival, then it's an opportunity for us to contribute to their lives, to do a mitzvah, to do an action of kindness, a conversation, a time that we spend, so that maybe with a certain probability they will get an insight into something better than they experienced in that day. And if that keeps happening on and on and on, depending on the probabilities of transformations from one state to another and the person we meet, the community will start to grow and will tend to grow to the highest level, because it cannot grow higher than that of that wise man and woman that you have in the community. And keep going. And so this more or less illustrated by this diagram. You can see there, you know, you have the different, you know, state 0, it's the X, and state 1 is the square, and state 2 is the circle, and state 3, consciousness, is the triangle. So these are the people in the community in the beginning. They're all, most of them, they are in state 0, survival mode. I mean, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you have 3 squares, which are 3 good people, and then you have 2 students of the light, and I think you have 1 wise person in that community. You can see that there. Yeah, you can. Are you finding that? Yeah? No? Okay. So, let's say this circle represents your community. Okay? So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 X. I define X as people who are in survival mode, kind of sometimes violent. Okay? Then you have other people in your community, these 3 squares that represent good people, good moral people. Then you have in this community that you start with 2 people, 1 and 2 circles that represent people who are moral but also studying scriptures and meditating to become more spiritually aware. And then you have a triangle which represents a person who is a wise man or woman, who is a person that people seek when they have troubles to hear and to learn from. And that's your starting point. And as time goes by and the interactions happen, your community starts to transform, and at one stage, after some years, you will have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 wise people and 3 students of the light. So your community has become a very enlightened community. How did that happen? Keep going. So in year 0, you have the community like that. In 5 years, you may have it transformed into a little better community. In 10 years, you may have it transformed into a much better community. And in 15 years, you may have it transformed into a community of very wise individuals that can go to other communities and help other communities. Keep going, Karen. So this is a simulation, a mathematical model that we did to understand how long would it take under different conditions for the community to reach the highest level there, which is everybody's wise. And you can see these are the months. So most, in different scenarios, it takes like 40 months, but there are certain ways of making it happen in 7, 10 years, 15 years. So really, we can start with a very messy community, and in 7 years, if we do things in a certain way, we may have an amazing community. And I want to stop here. I don't want to go into the work as a whole. I just want to think that peace starts with me and with my community. And the next talk, I will talk about meaning, values, and how to grow towards inner peace, and how to have skills to actually propagate peace in the world. All right?
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
So who would like to contribute, question, more thoughts? Can you identify some of this in our own community of miracle and consciousness? It seems like a community here where there's a lot of getting along. I think our community has a lot of civility.
Well, there is a good question to ask. Who is the wise person of miracle that you know?
Who is the what?
A wise person in miracle that you know.
Patrick.
Hey,
Patrick.
okay.
Okay.
You're
I'm pointing
him.
to the doctor.
Okay, the doctor and Patrick, okay, because if the doctor is the wisest, let's say for you, and he's pointing to Patrick, we have two wise people in the community, yes? If that's reliable. Patrick and doctor, do you, oh, okay, so that some people are pointing to you too. So we have 1, 2, 3 wise people here. Do you agree with that qualifier to your state of being in life? Are you a wise person? Did you hear that, people? You have a wise person here. Well, you may not accept that face value, but you can at least approach that person. That would be wise. Not accept it face value, approach it, and have a relationship and see what goodness you get by communicating with, what's your name again?
Mine. Selva.
With Selva. What goodness and what kind of transformations make you a better individual after 3 months of sharing with Selva occasionally or every day? I don't know. That's entirely up to every one of you. Do you think you're a wise person?
Hard to find out.
And do we take that as wisdom, or do we take that as, because humor, yeah, when a question is very, that question is awkward, because if you say yes, maybe you're just, you're not wise enough to measure your words. But if you say no, you're not wise, neither, because you want to be identified if you can help people as a wise person. Because that's in your nature. So you have to answer in a certain way that is not a yes, but it's not a no, it's for you to find out. And I imagine that joke led us to that. Yes, Selva, tell me.
I think you have to be wise enough to know that you don't know everything.
All right, that's baseline wisdom. Yeah, that's baseline wisdom.
I'm going to share something, something that I've learned over time. That one could be out in the world, let's say, in a supermarket, standing there ready to check out, and we never know who the guru is. A guru, a wise person, can be anywhere. And so to be open to consciousness and awareness, to be able to understand in a moment whoever it happens to be, without any qualifications of judgment. You just know that person is part of what has woken you up, part of how to become more awake and aware.
Yeah.
Anytime, anywhere, anyone.
Yeah. So what I think Shara is pointing us is to the possibility of being open, that the wisdom of God can manifest everywhere, anywhere, anytime, and it doesn't have to be any particular person. And I acknowledge that. But when you live in a community or in a family, you identify already a person who consistently is that guru that occasionally shows up. And so I'm talking about not just the occasional answer that you get from God from other people. I'm talking about the people who are consistently expressing that wisdom that you have identified in your life. They become very important in your life.
Did you want to say something?
Yes, I wanted to say something about the people that others have pointed out. And I think one thing they have in common with, that has allowed them to be seen as wise is they have this thing in common. They don't talk about others. They are very objective. They see a whole picture, not just the little individual irritations of the day. And they keep us focused on those big pictures rather than the small irritations.
So we're saying that there's some qualification within how we understand wisdoms that we can integrate
Yes.
these ways of being.
But I understand really well what you're pointing to. I concur in your observation. There are people in my life through the years that I would visit and I know I was there for them.
Yes.
But there are people in my life that I would visit and I know that they were there for me. So this transition, it's a journey towards wisdom, yeah?
Right.
And we usually, a good hallmark, if I understood you clearly, is that wise people are not focused on the superficial reactions
Yes.
that we display as humans, as part of the animal kingdom. They are more focused on the potential and the goodness and the big picture of each individual when they interact with them. So
Right.
there is no value judgment, there is just a real appreciation for the sacredness of every person.
Yes. Yes.
That's how I interpret.
Yes. That's a great,
Yeah, we can learn from everybody. We can get something from anybody you come in contact
Yes.
with. If you especially look for it, or even if you don't look for it, but you can find something good and one can learn something.
Yeah.
I'm very flattered by the doctor's suggestion that I might be possessed of wisdom. If there is any that I have, I would be inclined to identify it with patience, which I find to be one of the central primary attributes of wisdom. And one of the characteristics of patience is a recognition that the person claiming or being or acting the patience is doing so because he or she understands that she or he does not control, that watching what comes by and suffering it, taking note that suffering is the meaning of the word patience, and if you suffer to go by and not take on the arrogance of believing that you can control it, you may be sneaking upon wisdom.
Yeah. No, I can relate to that too. Patience, I usually joke with the word paciencia in Spanish, patience, paciencia. Because paciencia can be broken into paz, ciencia, which is the science of peace. So patience is the science of peace. And so what you're talking is, reminds me of my grandmother when she was alive. Because people would come with all sorts, the kids with all sorts of complaints about another person, let's say a cousin, and they would talk about, negatively or destructively about the other person that my grandmother also loved. And she was very patient to let them talk fully.
Yes.
And then she would end up saying, okay, I heard you fully, but let me tell you something of the good character of that person that you're talking bad about. So she would always leave the person that people were talking about, that they were not present, build up instead of destructive. So patience had to do with that.
So let me piggyback a little bit.
Yeah.
And also add to that, sometimes the impulse that comes is to judge. And the other side of that is a non-judgment. And when we judge, we have a reference point to how we then also behave, think, and act in the world. Perhaps to the other person that we're judging or thing or place. And so in being open-minded, then we have ability of non-attachment. So when there's non-attachment, then that openness opens it to the world and the people around us, to all possibilities. So when your grandma was looking at some, hearing and saying, and let's look at the good qualities, that is allowing, the big A word, allowing for things to be and unfold, instead of putting detours and blocks in how we may think about something or someone. When we allow it to just be and unfold itself, that's where wisdom and awakeness occurs.
I concur. I think that one of the things that people learn through life until they become enlightened is that the more, and I think you touched on that, the more people try to control something towards an end, it seems to kick on the opposite direction. And so when you open the space knowing that you're not controlling the situation, you're just looking for the goodness in the situation. Where is the goodness in the situation that can solve? Find a remedy, do justice. Doing justice is finding a remedy to a conflicting situation. Then I think you have become wise, because there is an element that we don't control, that we're only a witness to. Like in Chinese or in Asian wisdom, it's very well written. The Tao has no name, and if you can name it, it's not Tao. And in other places in the world, also, God has no name. It's just if you label it, it's just a very small version of the spiritual entity we would call the Creator, which has no name. It's infinite whatever. And so that's what I think you're pointing to get in touch with the fact that it's here with us, within us right now, and that we allow the space for that to illuminate our minds, and it will find its way to do it if we're all opening to
It's
that.
going to unfold.
Is that what you mean? I can see it in your eyeglasses.
Was there someone else here that wanted to?
I could just have an observation.
You can get it.
Okay, I've done a lot of reading about these types of models, and this reminds me of the 100th monkey, how one monkey taught the other. And now we're talking about a different model in terms of the human person. And idyllically, a lot of people have tried to have this type of model in communities, and invariably, like The Lord of the Flies. If you've studied that book, and you realize that there are other entities and biological and geographical things that happen to communities, and you can be like Siddhartha, looking and crossing the bridge. But the final answer is there is no real, you don't know everything, and you have to keep searching. And I think, reiterate what she said, not be judgmental, and just live with the philosophy of love and forgiveness. Because this model is perfect. I wish it were so that we could contaminate. And I think we do aim here at Mirabel for this type of environment. Many of us here are non-judgmental. We are a real model of different environments and communities. So I think it's a nice model to aim for. But again, kindness is the answer, and realizing we don't have all the answers.
Well, I think that the wise person, as I understand a person to be wise, is a person in touch with the unknown, with the thing that you can.
I got a 4 o'clock appointment, I'm sorry.
Thank you, man. Thank you for coming. All right.
We have a little more time.
Yeah.
I think this is refreshing.
Can I just piggyback on something? I kind of want to bring this to when we're faced with certain realities. And in this world right now, we're faced with something that is very far apart from the inner peace and harmony of the world.
Microphone.
I just wanted to mention two concepts. And one is, and they both came to me from different teachers. Because teachers you can hear, but how do you live what the teacher is teaching? And so there's two words in regards to what's happening in the world now. And one of them is a notion of scarcity. Like there's not enough land, there's not enough resources, scarcity. And then and that is to do with a lot of what wars come from. And then the other word that was given to me, it wasn't given me a teacher by word, but in this discussion like we're doing, was attachment. And he said that one of the ills, he used the word ills of the world, like a disease, an ill of the world, is attachments. And I'm going to leave it at those two concepts of scarcity and attachment. Attachment that it should be this way, because it was, and it should continue to be this way. Attachment to land, attachment to people, attachment to ideas.
Yeah, no, I concur. I was gonna express before that in my notion of wisdom and what a wise person experiences in his or her consciousness is precisely the kind of connection with life where that flow, it's happening for him or her all the time. And it's in those interactions in the flow that other people get to awake their own spark. And so the model of the community it's already here. We don't have to create a model. I'm just modeling very limited, because every single model that we have in science is just not reality. It's just a model of reality. It's a worldview. So this is a very simple example that allows me to illustrate for people who are locked in the rational paradigm of only scientific beliefs that there are other things that they're not considering to find general well-being and peace and harmony. And one of them is the unknown, which is the X factor that we cannot control, which we call God or Tao or the universe. Doesn't matter the label. But if we get in touch with that and we allow that in our relationships to be the foundation of our self-governance, that governs myself, the unknown, not as a limited entity, then we may end up with a community that ends up being moved, all of it, by that spirit. And
I want to give you one
that's why I
more.
want to identify the wise people, because they know how to live in that unknown.
I want to name it.
Yeah, name it.
Because I so identify with what you're saying.
Yeah.
Because what you're saying is what keeps moving us as a human species and as a world, and it's transcendence. The more conscious we are as people, the more transcendence happens.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a spiral instead of a circle. It doesn't keep going around, but it spirals into higher consciousness. And that's one of the things that I hope will save us.
Label it then.
Hmm?
What's the label?
Transcendence.
Oh, transcendence. Okay, yeah, I can relate to transcendence. I mean, that's a Tao, or that's whatever you want to call it. And I like any label, because any label that I will ever hear in my life, it's valid to the person who is expressing something that may be of value if I pay attention to it. So transcendence is something I want to pay attention to all the time.
Dr. Stalin, a couple of words of wisdom from you?
I am very impressed with the discussion going on. Mirror Valley is a good place for this kind of
We're waiting
discussion.
for you to come back.
I would love to. Yes, this is the learning place.
Thank you for coming. No, I'm really grateful for every one of you being here and participating in this conversation, because it makes the life of this person way more valuable. You know, I always say to my friends, there is no freedom of speech if we don't have freedom of listening. Because if people don't want to listen to me, they just go away. So I'm not free to speak if you don't lend me your ears and your attention. And for that, I'm extremely grateful. Freedom of speech is the freedom of people giving me their ears.
But you're
Thank
wise
you.
enough to know that if they don't listen, they're not ready.
You know, I don't get upset about that. I'm just saying thank you for listening, because I don't know if I'll do justice to that, but giving and receiving is one thing, it's not two. You know, when you give and the other one receives, you're the one who's receiving and the other one is giving. So it's a mutual state of ongoing flow of substance and life, and I'm grateful for that. I don't take that for granted. I'm sitting gratitude to the unknown that brings this together. If-
Gratitude's another good word.
Yeah, that which transcends every one of us, you know, to use her word. I sit in gratitude, seeing every one of you, and that which transcends all of us, but things that we're aware of, we cannot speak. They have no words. They
And you
just
bet you're
are.
gonna be back with more.
Next time, next conversation, I'm going to talk about meaning and values.
Meaning and values.
Yes.
We'll be here. We'll come with our meaning and values.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Please thank Joshua.
Thank you. Thank you.